Hello there, I'm failing YouTuber and man who really needs to figure out a better time of day to, record so that I don't get the reflection in my eyes. Sean, Magma Male Barrett. And let me tell you, I do not like pranks. I've disliked pranks for a very long time because I'm I'm one of those people who the world perceives as a victim, if you will. I'm very easy to prank. I'm quite naive in some respects. I mean, I've gotten better at it over the years, but as a young'un, I was very easily caught out by being sent a video link that was something outrageous or a rickroll, um, or being just being like jabbed, poked. I never fell for one of the classics like being sent out of the classroom for some tartan paint or a long wait. Um, but I'm not a fan of pranks, and I find them I find them rather childish. And so the fact that we have an entire day, well, not even an entire day dedicated to it. There's a lot of things about April Fool's Day that really confuse me, which is why I've brought you this cold open with no ulterior motive behind it, because I'm not the kind of person that just cheaply launches a prank. Okay, that was a little bit cheap. I'll concede that, but it was funny and it is a legitimately good song in my opinion. So really, you won, and I probably didn't play the full thing because it would make the length of this video extraordinary. If you didn't leave after that really obviously, hyped up prank, welcome to the actual bulk of the episode. I do genuinely have a disdain for pranks, and I will tell you for why. Um, I know it was horrible of me, but come on, allow me that one rickroll. I won't do it again. You'd expect me to do it again. Like if I just went silent for an extended period of time. Huh. You see, you're there, you're waiting for it, you're expecting it. That's the worst thing with them. Like with the cheap, jump scare or rickroll pranks. It's like when you expect them, it makes it worse. Which kind of brings me sensibly on my first point about April Fool's Day, in that it is the one day of the year set aside to be for pranking. I mean, in the UK, like the tradition is that you must get them done before noon. So it's the one morning of the year in which you are allowed to prank people. Which means that everyone's expecting something. Everyone's on their guard. They're like, oh, someone sent me a link on this morning of April the 1st. I don't trust that. Same goes for, oh, someone's calling me and telling me some outrageous news. Ah, but it is the morning of April the 1st, which means it's probably bullshit. Which conversely means that if you get told something absolutely outrageous, you're inclined not to believe it. Which is a horrible set of circumstances to be in. Imagine getting that phone call. Hello, I'm so sorry to tell you, but your cat has died. Oh, give over. You can't honestly mean that. My cat's alive and well. You're just trying to get me with one of your classic japes. No, 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 sir. I hit your cat with my car. I rang the number on the collar. It's dead. Oh, but we'll touch on that a little bit later on. First of all, we've got to understand why April Fools exists in the first place. And if you go to any reputable online encyclopedia that may or not be related to, like, well, let's just say it's a rejumble of the kiwi fruit. It's Wiki. All right, Wiki's what I was referring to. If you do a basic amount of research, which, as I've said, is like the maximum amount that I'm going to do on this show, you'll discover that the origins for April Fool's Day make absolutely no sense. So let me read you an excerpt just to really drive it home. So the first instance of a day of pranking comes from the Roman festival of Hilaria. That's fine. Chaucer's classic Canterbury Tales is set 32 days after March, which is April the 1st, and apparently there is some tricking going on that day. A French poet referred to a poisson d'avril, which is probably a horrible pronunciation, but it's an April Fool, or literal translation, a fish of April. Go figure. Or go fish. Which was deemed a possible reference to the holiday. A Flemish poet sent his servants out on foolish errands on April 1st. Possibly going for the Belgian equivalent of a long wait or a tartan paint or skyhooks. Which I can only imagine has something to do with Tintin or Smurfs. There's also references to it in the Middle Ages, but really, if you look it up, there's not much logic behind it. There's just sort of a day set aside for pulling shite pranks on each other. And really, what is the point of that? There's been many instances of really, really shitty pranks. One of the earliest examples of an April Fool's Day prank I could find was in 1957. BBC aired a panorama show in which they claimed that in Sweden they had trees that grew spaghetti, and that people in the UK were trying to cultivate their own spaghetti trees. However, this very website is rather notable for its YouTube pranks, including one year where clicking the YouTube button would send you to Never Gonna Give You Up, the infamous Rickroll, but we've already had one of those, so I'm not going to send you there again. I'm really not. You can't trust me. YouTube has also claimed that the competition was over and the search for the best video had ended. I believe that was in 2013. They also said they were going to send out boxed DVDs of all the content uploaded to YouTube. Google, our lords and masters, have also brought on a couple of good pranks. More recently they had Google Maps with Pac-Man, and this year you've got Miss Pac-Man. And they even went so far as to introduce a new position at Google of being an official Pokemon master by going on Google Maps and capturing all 151 of the original Pokemon. And that idea was so good it actually formed the foundation for the global sensation Pokemon Go, which really is the biggest prank on us all, because Google set in motion a prank. They paid money for this prank to happen, and then it made them a boatload more cash, which is hilarious if you work for Google, but not so much if you're the victim of a very mediocre mobile app. But that's the thing, when you have these expectations of the big companies, and indeed of your friends, you just get a really shitty holiday, especially when you factor in that in the UK we stop at midday, which means you have to think of something that's going to happen in the morning, when most people are, too busy to have the time for your bullshit. You have to set it into motion. And everyone's expecting it, so no one will take you seriously. I personally would think that there should be a committee, which of course I'm more than willing to be part of, that just changes the day of April, well, not April Fool's Day, but just of a Fool's Day every year, and just tells people. We go to Google and we're like, "Oi, Google, get your prank sorted." And then Google, of course, are like, "Yeah, alright." Which is exactly what Google sounds like if you've ever talked to him. Anyway, this is neither here nor there. This was just a short, poorly conceived video made, hopefully to get you a couple of laughs, because, April Fool's Day, I make a fool of myself by coming on here and ranting occasionally. There's a full-scale Baffled in the works. This is just sort of an extra sort of bonus thing, because we haven't really followed our schedule of Baffleds quite correctly so far. But that's fine. Don't you worry yourselves. I've got this. Those are just my thoughts on April Fool's Day and how shitty a holiday it is in both execution and concept. And it can be a force for good, and you get good laughs out of it, and companies have a good laugh with it as well, and we can make a horrible video tie-in to it, and that's all well and good. But sometimes you just gotta sit back and think to yourself that